Hello and welcome to the Craft Beer Corner. For today's review, we've got a fun one. We've got a couple distinctly different beer styles, but they share a commonality in ingredients and also in brewers. So we're going to be starting today with a collaborative brew between Interboro Spirits and Ales. They're the primary brewer, and County Brewers Collective. This beer is called Mad Fat Zombie. It is a fruited IPA, clocks in at 7% ABV, and it was brewed with tangerine and boysenberry. Interboro Spirits and Ales is based in Brooklyn, New York, as is County Brewers Collective, so they are both based in Kings County, New York. Moving on to number 2, this is County Brewers Collective, so this is just their own on this one. This is called Zombieland Double Tap, so you're noticing a lot of commonalities here. This is a fruited sour, clocks in at 5.5% ABV, and this one was brewed with boysenberry, strawberry, apricot, and raspberry, and of course they are based in Brooklyn, New York. So we've got two beers, one from Interboro Spirits and Ales, but they brewed in collaboration with Kings County. Both beers are fruited, one's a sour, one's an IPA. Both of them have boysenberry, and both of them are from Brooklyn, New York. So we've got distinctly different beers, but a lot of common ground between the two, and I can't wait to jump into both. So we're going to get started with the collaborative brew between Interboro Spirits and Ales and Kings County Brewers Collective. This is Mad Fat Zombie, the IPA, clocking in at 7% ABV. Okay, so jumping right in with the first beer of today's fruited beer review, we've got Interboro Spirits and Ales collaborative brew with Kings County Brewers Collective. This is Mad Fat Zombie. It's a fruit IPA that's been brewed with tangerine and boysenberry, clocks in at 7% ABV, and both brewers are based in Brooklyn, New York. So first thing first, in terms of label art, very, very basic, very plain, subdued, nice, clean design. Though worth noting that there is a kind of frothing at the mouth zombie head for the O in the word zombie on the beer label. I like it. It looks really neat. That's about the extent of the art. So let's get this bad boy cracked. Also notice both of these beers have zombie in the name as well as being fruited. Both brewers based in Brooklyn. Both of them have Kings County Brewers Collective hand in it, and they both have boysenberry as one of the fruits. So this ought to be a really fun review. I'm looking forward to this. Let's get this poured in a glass. Oh, that's looking lovely. That boysenberry is really adding that nice depth of orangey red. Of course, tangerine's going to add a little orange back to it, but yeah, that's predominantly the boysenberry that you're seeing in this beer. All right, not going to get the full thing in there. This does not hold a pint, and that's a pint can. But nonetheless, let's hold it up to the light. Oh, it's very nice. It's a cloudier beer. It's murky looking. It's a nice color, though. It's kind of a reddish, orangish with hints of tan, but it's nice. I'm not sure exactly what I would call this color, but it's reddish, orangish, brownish, kind of a hybrid between the three. It is an IPA. It formed an okay head. I can tell you, I can see the effervescence here. Mix of small and medium, but predominantly medium bubbles. So I don't think that the head it did form is going to hold all that long, but that's all right. Let's give it a sniff. Ooh. Yeah, that smells quite nice. It doesn't have the most pronounced aroma in the world at all, in fact. It's not pronounced at all. But when you really breathe in deeply over it, you can smell the fruit influence, and you can smell what smells like classic IPA. So you can get a little bit of the hops, a little bit of the fruit, but the aroma overall is so weak, it's really hard to pick out that much. But I can tell you, I can smell fruit, and I can smell hops, but I got to really breathe in deeply. Right up on it. So it's going to be a bit of a surprise. So let's jump right in, see what this one's about. Ooh. Oh, that's nice. Oh, yeah, it's a very nice beer. Okay, so first thing first, the fruit, the boysenberry and the tangerine both come through perfectly clearly, as does the fact that this is an IPA at its base. So you're getting crystal clear boysenberry followed by tangerine, and they both are immediately known. That's boysenberry, that's tangerine, and then you're getting hops. And I cannot begin to tell you what this hop bill might be, but Overall, it's not super hop forward. It's not dominating the beer. The fruit is really kind of the dominant flavor that's coming through, and the hops are behind it. I'd say it's roughly fruit to hops, 65-35, give or take that balance. And the hop characteristics that are coming through are very subtle. It's definitely milder hops. I would guess something akin to some German and Czech noble hops, or like some classic English Fuggle hops, something mild with a low alpha acid content. It's not overly hopped, so they really wanted the fruit to be the star of this IPA, though it's very clearly an IPA. It doesn't taste like just a fruited ale. It's definitely got a more hop forward and hop centric bend to it, but the hops are not overshadowing the fruit here. In terms of the finish, I already caught that up front. It's not a very long finish at all. It's quite truncated, so it's much shorter than your average IPA to be certain. And the body and the mouthfeel, I'll have to jump back in for the body, but I can tell you the mouthfeel does feel quite viscous. It does feel thick, and when you agitate it around the palate to let the flavors coat all around so you don't miss anything, it gets very, very silky creamy, very thick, silky creamy when you do that. So I'm going to jump back in to make sure I get this body. I know the mouthfeel. Get the body and see if I can pick out any more of this flavor development. Body is on the border between medium and medium heavy. It feels much more robust than a 7% ABV would maybe put you in mind of. Same thing with the mouthfeel. It's got real resistance to it. And the slightest, and I truly mean this, the slightest agitation at all on the palate, and it just creams. Just silky, thick, lush creaminess texture to the beer. It's really, really impressive, this body and this mouthfeel for this ABV range. In terms of the flavor development, it really is all about what you get up front, because the flavor is gone in under 5 seconds. The finish, it's super short. There's not really a finish, so to speak. It's just, oh, there's flavor, okay, it's gone. Which is, you don't get that in a lot of beers. In fact, it's much shorter than even your average sour, which dry out and then they're kind of gone, or a nice crisp Pilsner. It's even shorter than that. It's very, very short in terms of the length of the flavors that you get sticking around the palate. But what you do get comes in intensity, it comes up front, it's very big, it's very bold. You can taste everything. The balance of it I like. Even though it's more fruit dominant than an IPA, it really does feel balanced just the way that the flavors develop. It's immediate boysenberry, then tangerine, then hops, and it's all there, and then it's all gone. So it's hard to really pick anything out outside of the fact that I can get it all. So the balance up front is right. If it had a longer finish, maybe I would have a little more to add to it, but honestly, it's so short. The finish is so short on each sip, it's really hard to criticize that much when you're tasting all of the independent elements. I'm going to jump in one more time here for final thoughts. It's a nice beer. Pungent boysenberry, then pungent tangerine, then the hops, a little Christmas finish of the malt bill, and within 5 seconds it's gone. It's just gone. It's a nice beer. It's not what I expected, but it's an enjoyable beer. I like it. It's very tasty, and there's a slight lingering bitter, but there's no real flavors, so to speak. So the finish really, if you want to say anything, goes after 5 seconds, the bitters. But again, it's very mild. It's not intense. It's not super high alpha. It's not pungent. There's no overarching, oh boy, that's very piney, that's very resinous, that's very citrusy. No, it's just kind of generic earthy hop, and what you get is what you get. It's all up front, and then it's gone. It's very clean. But it's not a dry finish. It's wet. It's nice beer. It's tasty. I'm going to take my time, sip on this, cover my scores. When we come back, we will get to the second beer, and that is going to be County Brewers Collective Zombieland Double Tap, the fruit sour that clocks in at 5.5% ABV. Okay, and moving on to beer number 2 for today's review, we have got Kings County Brewers Collective Zombieland Double Tap, which is a fruit sour, clocks in at 5.5% ABV. It's got boysenberry, strawberry, apricot, and raspberry in it, and they are based out of Brooklyn, New York. So we've got the zombie County Brewers Collective, differing beer styles, but both fruit and both involving Kings County as a main theme brewer in both, and boysenberry in both, which is not a common brew ingredient. So I'm really excited. I think it's going to lend itself very well to a sour. I've never had a sour with boysenberry, but I imagine this is going to work well, especially with the strawberry, apricot, and raspberry. I think that's going to be a recipe for success. But let's go ahead and check out this label. True to style, Kings County Brewers Collective, they always have some of the best label art you will ever see. They use this kind of comic book art style. I'm going to try to angle it away from the cameras to get rid of the glare, but you can see it's a bunch of zombies in front of a cinema under the cinema sign. It looks awesome, as always. So let's get this cracked gently. Yeah. And we'll get this one poured right in the glass. All right. So the combination of boysenberry and raspberry and strawberry is definitely adding this nice red hue to this beer. Apricot, of course, is going to add a slightly orange hue, but between the three, they're going to overpower the other. So it looks quite nice. I can say for a sour, this formed quite an impressive head, which I don't really want on a sour. It's rather out of place. I'm going to let that settle. But visually, looks very nice. It's a deep ruby red, a true ruby red. Looks absolutely lovely in the glass. Just as with the first, it's occluded. This is not a crystal clear beer. It's murky. It's got a lot of fruit in it. It's a sour, so it, you know, it's not going to be crystal clear. It hasn't been clarified. It's got all these fruit additives, and that is pretty much typical. What is not typical for a sour is a head like this. I am going to go ahead and just take a sniff of this first before I break that head down. I'm going to give it another minute to settle. Don't want a head on a sour. Ooh. Oh, wow. That smells, honestly, like a combination of a strawberry raspberry framboise. That's what it smells like. It smells absolutely amazing. It smells absolutely amazing. The raspberry really leaps out of you first, and then the strawberry comes on full force. Now, I can tell you, I cannot smell the boysenberry, nor can I smell the apricot in this at all. But I'm hoping that they're going to be present in the flavor profile. But it smells amazing. It's a beautiful beer in the glass to behold. And the head may look a little taller on film than it is in real life. It's actually already settled. That's just got a little cling on the side. So it did form a head to start, but it didn't take it a minute to get out of the way. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Oh, yeah. Oh, that's delicious. Oh, that is really, really good. That is really, really good. Okay, so the aroma that smelled like a raspberry strawberry framboise kind of sort of translated into the flavor. It's got boysenberry, it's got strawberry, it's got apricot, it's got raspberry. Raspberry is a very pungent fruit, and it is dominating this beer. Really, the strawberry you only get in the aroma. It's not coming through in the flavor at all. The apricot, I didn't get in aroma. I'm not getting it in flavor. The boysenberry, I didn't get it in aroma. I'm not getting it in flavor. This smells strawberry raspberry. It tastes entirely raspberry. But as enjoyable as having all of these fruit make their presence known on the flavor profile and not getting it, that being said, it tastes absolutely fantastic. This really does put me in mind of framboise lambic. It really does. It tastes very much like some of my favorite framboise lambics. Lindman's is probably my favorite, and it really immediately, that's where my brain went. There's this tartness, there's the slight sourness up front, but it's not overt. There's a slight sweetness to it, and it's abundantly fruity, and it's got a malt bill that puts me in mind of a lambic as well. So it's got these underlying kind of baked good malt bill qualities. So there's biscuit, there's toast, there's crust. It's got this dryness factor. This is really, really delicious. It's really delicious. Yeah, it's a little disappointing. I can't taste all of the fruit that they added in the actual flavor. It's a little disappointing. I couldn't smell them all in the aroma. But once you get into it and you get it across your lips, it tastes so good, honestly. I find myself, I just don't mind. This is a seriously, seriously delicious beer. I'm going to jump in for body and mouthfeel and start to explore this flavor development. This is a really nice one. The body is surprisingly large, as is the mouthfeel for just a 5.5% ABV and on a sour nonetheless. The body is a solid medium. It's a solid medium. And it's kind of on the high end of average of medium. It's got real presence. It feels so much larger than you would expect a 5.5%. The mouthfeel, same thing. It is massively viscous. It is massively viscous. And the slightest hint, just as with the first beer, the slightest hint of agitation on the palate gets it ridiculously creamy. It gets so much thicker and denser and creamy, and it's silky. It's not foamy, it's just silky, thick, creamy. And God, this beer just tastes so good. It's got this pungent, in-your-face raspberry that mixes with the tart and the sour up front. And it's just got lingering raspberry, just lingering raspberry. It is so freaking tasty. I'm not getting all the fruit out of it, but what I am getting tastes so good. Honestly, I don't care. I don't care. This tastes bloody fantastic. I'm going to jump in again for flavor development, which I thought on a little bit, but I had a few more things to add. I got to jump in again, make sure I didn't miss anything, and for final thoughts. The balance obviously is off in the fruit, but frankly, it tastes so good, I don't mind. Let's jump in. Okay, so that was actually a very telling sip. Flavor development. The apricot and the boysenberry do make their presence known if you agitate vigorously around the palate. It kind of opens up all of the beer, aerates it, lets it coat the full palate. You can taste the apricot, you can taste the boysenberry, and you can taste the raspberry in full force. The only thing that's getting lost flavor-wise for the fruit they added is the strawberry, but it did impart just a tremendous amount of aroma. It was equal 50-50 raspberry, strawberry, smelled amazing. I would have enjoyed tasting it in the beer as well because I love them, but actually, hold that thought. It took 10 seconds, but on the back end, and it's only when you really properly agitate it around the palate. You really gotta agitate it around the palate. Swish, swish, swish. The strawberry comes in about 10 seconds after you swallow on the back end. It does. It does make its presence known. It's subtle, but it is there. Okay, so this beer has a lot of secrets. It's got a lot of layers. It's very interesting. And I got to reiterate again just how positively delicious this is. This is a very, very delicious beer. It's very enjoyable to drink. I am really, really enjoying this one. I'm going to jump in for one final sip, just one more final sip, and I've got plenty of room to top this off. Yeah, one more sip after the top off, just to make sure I don't have anything else to tell you, but I'm really liking this one, really liking it. Sour tart up front, big, immediate, then raspberry. And if you agitate it on the palate, about 5 seconds in, the apricot and boysenberry come in. Waiting for it. Yeah, it is. It's about 10 seconds. Then the strawberry comes in. Once the intensity of the raspberry and then the secondary apricot and boysenberry die back a little bit, they fall back a little bit in intensity, the strawberry finally makes its presence known. It's very subtle, but it's so good. And then you can taste all four together. And you can pick them out quite clearly. The finish on this, in terms of sour, it's probably the high end of average. It's got a longer finish than you would expect, and it's got a slight dryness to it. It's not as astringently dry as your average sour, but there is that classic dryness. Very, very good beer. I'm going to sip on this, come up with my scores. When we come back, we will get both beers ranked from top to bottom. Okay, now that we've gotten to enjoy both beers, we're going to get them ranked, starting with the Interboro Spirits and Ales collaborative brewed with County Brewers Collective. This is Mad Fat Zombie, IPA of the bunch. 7% ABV on this one, brewed with tangerine and boysenberry, and they both are based in Brooklyn, New York. Starting with the aroma. The aroma on this beer was very, very faint. It was almost indiscernible. I just could pick up a little bit of malt when I got right over it and a little bit of fruit, but it was very nondescript. It only gets a 2 out of 10. For the taste, I enjoyed this beer. For an IPA, it wasn't very hop forward and it wasn't very bitter forward. For the fruit that they added in, it was nice, but overall, I just thought this was kind of an average fruited IPA offering. I've had many, and frankly, this just didn't quite pack the punch, and especially a 7% ABV. I mean, nothing wrong with the ABV range. This is sitting in the Goldilocks for a standard IPA. It was really about flavor pungency and how they developed and what came through. It just wasn't really outside of the average realm. I give it squarely a 5. For the body on this beer was freaking huge. It really, really was. For 7%, it felt way more robust than that. Tremendous heft to the body. It gets a perfect 10 out of 10. The mouthfeel, a similar story. This was textbook IPA, but it had a lot more resistance to it. The fruit that were added in there certainly played their part, but the beer felt really nice. It felt really big. It felt great moving it around the palate. It gets a perfect 10 out of 10. For the finish, this is one of the weakest finishes I've had on an IPA in a long, long time. It just didn't have the hop presence and the bitter presence to kind of extend it out. Frankly, on each sip, you could get it up front. Within a few seconds, it was gone. I mean, the finish was so short. It's among the shortest I've had. Gosh, it's been well over a year since I've had a finish this short on any beer style. It only gets a 2 out of 10. For the head and retention, it did okay. It did okay. I mean, it wasn't great. It wasn't bad. It was just okay. I'm sure it would have poured better off of a tap, but it poured how it poured at home. It gets average. It gets a 5 out of 10. For the appearance on this beer was very, very nice. No question about it. It wasn't quite the deep shade that I did anticipate, but certainly there was a redness factor to it and a slight orange, obviously with the tangerine in there, but it looked nice and it looked appropriate for what they put in there. I thought it was above average. It gets a 7 out of 10. For the balance, even though this beer lost some big points in quite a few categories, overall I did think it was very, very well balanced. It was really an issue of pungency for me. The balance between the boysenberry and the tangerine was excellent. You could pick them both out independently, albeit there were other mitigating factors that kept you from really getting to explore this beer just because each sip was so quick. And that was a bit of a disservice to a beer that I think is better than how it actually ranked, because I did enjoy it. But I did think the balance was great between the additives and the malt bill, and I liked the hop selection. It just didn't come through with the pungency for me. Above average, though, it gets an 8 out of 10. Feeling in the intangible, I did enjoy the beer, but it lost some big points in quite a few categories. Really, the finish was the one for me, kind of in tandem with the taste and aroma. Taste was average, finish was not great, aroma was not great. We taste our beer first through our nose. That aroma is the biggest part of what's going to play into what we experience in that beer. Over 90% of the sensation to taste is aroma. So if a beer is lacking in aroma, it's going to be lacking in flavor. And this should have been really nice and pungent and full of flavor, and it just wasn't. And then the finish didn't extend out, anywhere to really let me go with this beer and explore it. It just kind of ended as soon as it began. I thought it was average, high end. It gets a 6 out of 10. Finally, as an example of this style, it's okay. I mean, it's okay. In terms of an IPA, not great. In terms of a fruited IPA, it was okay. But really this beer needed some work for my money. It needed more intensity of flavor. It needed a bigger helping from the hops in the background, because at its heart, it is still an IPA. Something, I don't know. I mean, there's not many beers I experience that are this truncated, but this was very much so, and it made it really hard to experience this beer to the fullest. I thought it was average. It gets a 5 out of 10, which brings the total score on Interboro Spirits and Ales Collaborative Brew with County Brewers Collective, Mad Fat Zombie, to a 60 out of 100. So this just does hit the high end of average threshold. I thought it was a good beer. Overall, I enjoyed it more than the scores would dictate, but the scores were what they were. It presented itself how it did, and that's the score. Moving on to beer number 2. This is just Kings County Brewers Collective, Zombieland Double Tap. This is a fruit sour, 5.5% ABV on this one, and this was boysenberry, strawberry, apricot, and raspberry, based out of Brooklyn, New York. Starting with the aroma. The aroma on this beer was fine. It wasn't great, it wasn't bad. It's just average. It gets a 5 out of 10. For the taste was absolutely fantastic. I loved the flavor of this beer. It had the right amount of sour, the right amount of tart, and all of the fruit that went into it. Although you had to really explore it in between sips to really start to pick out all of the fruit, but they did all make their presence known. And overall, I really enjoyed what it brought to the table. I give it a 9 out of 10. For the body on this beer was much larger than you would expect for a 5.5% ABV, but it was not out of the normal range for this style, which is a fruit sour, specifically the sour. But it was nice and robust for the style. Gets a perfect 10 out of 10. For the mouthfeel, it's exactly what I expected for a sour beer. The fruit added a bit more resistance, a bit more viscosity to it, but it was nice, it was creamy, had a slight dryness on the end. It was a really, really well done sour that was equally tasty. Mouthfeel gets a 10 out of 10 for me. Finish on this beer was quite nice. Well above average for a sour in terms of the expectations for the style. I think the fruit really helped it along. The raspberries in particular, they were quite pungent in terms of the balance of the ingredients. I enjoyed everything that came through, but the raspberry was a bit overbearing. You could still pick everything out, but it was kind of like a flavor Easter egg hunt to get them. But it did help extend that finish out, even though it had a nice classic dryness to the end. It was still well above average here. It gets a 7 out of 10. For the head and retention, this beer formed a little head at first, and it got out of the way within, it wasn't even 30 seconds. It's a sour. You don't really want to head on the sour. They can try to form, and they often will, typically will at the start, but they're very effervescent. It gets out of the way. A mouthful of sour foam, it's just not pleasurable. It's not right. And this got out of the way, did its job. It gets above average. It gets an 8 out of 10. For the appearance, this beer was absolutely lovely. It's exactly what I expected given the fruit additives in it. It was just beautiful. It gets a perfect 10 out of 10. For the balance, overall, the balance of the actual beer itself, the base malt bill, I appreciated. And the balance of the souring and the tart agents, it all came through in the right balance for me. Where the balance was askew was really in the quantities of the fruits added. Raspberry, I love, but you're going to also take the time to put in boysenberry, apricot, and strawberry, and it was real work to pick all of those out. The boysenberry came through before the others. The apricot and the strawberry, it took me several sips, really aerating, really critically thinking about what I was tasting to finally be able to pick them out. Once they were there, I was able to discern them quicker, but I would have liked a dial back on the raspberry a bit, bring up the strawberry for sure. That gets lost in beers very easily. Apricot, bring that up as well. The boysenberry was close, but a little more of that would have helped just balance it out better. I thought it was average though. It gets a 5 out of 10. Filling in the intangible. I loved it. I thought this beer was absolutely delicious. I nitpicked a few categories. It is what it is, but overall I really enjoyed the beer. It gets a 9 out of 10. Finally is an example of the style. Here we come again. Another beer where it lost some pretty big points in multiple different categories, but overall, the beer drinking experience and the flavor of it was just so nice, I decided to not dock any points. I teeter-tottered on this when it would have been easy to dock a point or two, but frankly, this beer was just so good that I gave it the full 10. So it gets a 10 out of 10 as an example of the style. And that brings the total score on Kings County Brewers Collective Zombieland Double Tap to an 83 out of 100. So we're looking at a 23-point spread here. That's pretty big, and indeed it is. No question in my brain, although there are different styles, this one was indeed the superior beer offering. You know, if you're in the mood for a fruit IPA, it's a good beer. I enjoyed it, but it just didn't have the substance for me. This, a few little balance issues, but overall, very enjoyable and positively delicious. Folks, that's today's review. As always, I do sincerely appreciate you tuning in today. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you would like to stay in the loop when our videos go live to YouTube, you can just click the notification bell icon. It is right next to the subscribe button. Until next time, keep it beer, keep it craft. We'll see you on the next one. Cheers.